Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you, as always, for taking the time to check out today's live stream. So, for today's live stream, of course, we're going to be talking about muscle soreness. But before I get started, I do want to mention my website, which is bponlinefitness.com. Again, there's all kinds of information on there, free information that you can check out and that you have access to. I always upload live streams to there. If there's a new live stream that comes out, I usually post it into onto my website, I should say, and I always keep it updated. I have a free fitness blog that you can access there. I also have a way for you to sign up to my email newsletter that I send out every single week, so you can check that out. Um, I just want to mention that because I do continuously work on that website. Again, it's bponlinefitness.com. If you want the link to that, you can feel free to let me know. But with all that being said, actually, one more thing that I do want to mention. I do have a new YouTube video that I just uploaded just at least 30 minutes ago. That's on beginner leg base, or excuse me, beginner machine leg workouts. So you can check that video out right now. It is on my YouTube channel. If you do want the link to my YouTube channel, feel free to let me know. Um, I forgot to mention that beforehand, but that's the other thing that I want to mention. So let's go ahead and get started with talking about today's topic, which is understanding muscle soreness. And this is a very important topic and a topic I've not really dived deep into. So I do want to go over a bunch of various aspects when it comes to muscle soreness. And this topic is a little bit more detailed than you would expect for something, about muscle soreness. But I'm going to be talking about a lot of different things when it comes to, understanding what delayed onset muscle soreness is. This is a term that, you know, as I became a personal trainer, is a term that I became very familiar with, and I'm going to explain what that term means to you guys as well. I'm going to also explain the science behind muscle soreness, some common triggers that come with delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS is the acronym for that, and then basically explaining the difference between normal soreness that you would have after a workout versus sort of any indicators that you may have of an injury. So that's what I'm going to be discussing today. Now, this is not all intensive of exactly what I'm discussing, but these are some of the major topics that I'm going to be going over today. So let's go ahead and get started with the first point, which is delayed onset muscle soreness. So basically, what DOMS is the muscle soreness and stiffness that sets in 12 to 24 hours after exercise, often peaking between 24 and 48 hours. So that's basically, in simple terms, what delayed onset muscle soreness is. This type of soreness is commonly associated with exercise that involve eccentric muscle contractions, movements where the muscle lengthens while under tension. So when you're doing different exercises, or mainly pretty much almost any exercise that you do is going to have an eccentric contraction. So there are two different types of movement patterns that come with workouts, and that's basically eccentric and concentric. So these two different movements are basically, you know, the starting point of the exercise and then the ending point. So when you get started with an exercise movement, no matter what it is, let's just say, for example, we're talking about a bicep curl. When you're doing that contraction, that's basically the eccentric motion. So keep that in mind, that that's what eccentric means, is this the contraction of that muscle. So the opposite of that is known as concentric, which is basically the lowering phase of that workout. So for, again, talking about a bicep curl or lifting that weight up, that's the eccentric motion. And then the concentric motion is the lowering phase of that workout. And this is very important. I know that may not seem very, something that you need to know, but it is something to be mindful of, especially in your workouts. Having a very slow especially a concentric phase, which is the lowering phase, is very beneficial. But basically, what we're talking about primarily is that the muscle soreness comes from the lifting phase, of course, where the muscle is lengthening while under that tension. So if you're trying a new exercise, significantly increasing your workout intensity or engaging in activities your muscles aren't used to, you're likely to experience delayed onset muscle soreness. So you'll notice this if you, again, very simple. If you do any activities that are going to sort of show anything new that you've tried, you're going to get that soreness that comes from those workouts. So, a large number of repetitions, heavy lifting, or high intensity interval training can also lead to delayed onset muscle soreness as well. And I've talked a little bit about high intensity interval training, and I'll go ahead and sort of reiterate what that means. So, basically, what high intensity interval training means is it's basically a lot of the workouts are primarily body weight based workouts in this type of training method. And you're basically going through a certain set of intervals of different workouts in sort of a rapid succession. It's very similar to a circuit, however, it's a little bit different the way that the intervals work. Usually, when you're talking about circuit training, usually it's a little bit faster. And then high intensity interval training is where you're having sort of minimal rest in between those intervals. That's sort of what high intensity interval training is. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what it is. A lot of it is very body weight based workouts, a lot of more cardiovascular types of exercises, really fast paced exercises are under that sort of umbrella with the high intensity interval training. So this is just an overall view of what delayed onset muscle soreness is. And some of the other common triggers I do want to mention, and this is sort of expanding upon what we just talked about with delayed onset muscle soreness. And I'm going to explain a little bit more why this is important. So, eccentric movements, as we just mentioned, can cause more micro tears in the muscle fibers compared to concentric, which again is the shortening phase. It's that lowering phase where we're shortening the muscle versus tightening that muscle. So activities that involve a lot of eccentric work like downhill running, lowering heavy weights, or deceleration movements are major triggers for delayed onset muscle soreness. When you introduce a new exercise or physical activity into your routine, your muscles are exposed to unfamiliar stress, which this is natural. That's going to happen, especially if you're new to exercise. you know, that sort of soreness is going to happen no matter what. You're going to sort of have that top of soreness if you are just new to an exercise. So that's not really uncommon. Sudden increases in the intensity, so lifting heavier weights or volume of an exercise can trigger delayed onset muscle soreness. Exercises that involve jumping, bounding, or other high impact movements, which is basically the same thing as high intensity interval training, is what can lead to that. The rapid and forceful muscle contractions required in these activities, they place substantial stress on the muscle fibers, leading to micro tears and subsequent soreness in the muscles. So one thing I do want to mention, because you see the terms micro tears, and then you know, you kind of think of basically that's a bad thing. Micro tears in the muscles are not necessarily a bad thing. So basically, when you're doing any type of new exercise, or even as your muscles are adapting to the workouts, so you're doing your existing workouts, you're going to get micro tears in the muscles, which is basically the way of the muscle to sort of repair itself. That's basically what those micro tears are. Placing stress on the muscle fibers are a part of the process when it comes to muscle gain. So don't sort of feel like micro tears is a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing because it is essential and it's a part of the process to get that muscle gain. So again, this is sort of giving you an indicator on sort of how muscle soreness comes about, especially delayed onset muscle soreness. And again, when we're talking about this type of soreness, if you've after workout, you may not feel sore initially after it, but after a certain period of time, like 24 to 48 hours, if you're feeling that soreness at that time, that's basically what that is. That's that feeling that you are getting is that delayed onset muscle soreness. So, what is the science behind muscle soreness? So, during intense exercise, especially anaerobic activities like sprinting or weightlifting, the muscles produce energy through glycolysis, a process that doesn't require oxygen. This process leads to accumulation of lactic acid in the muscles, lowering the pH and contributing to the sensation of burning or tightness. So that's what that is it's the muscles producing that energy. This is all a part of the process. Alongside with lactic acid, other metabolites, hydrogen ions, and phosphate accumulate in the muscles during intense exercises. These substances can irritate nerve endings and contribute to that sensation of soreness. So as muscles work, they deplete their energy stores like ATP, and I've mentioned ATP in the past, but basically what ATP is basically the energy production. So it's known as adenosine triphosphate. It's the energy production that you get basically from what you're doing in your workouts. And glycogen, another aspect of that. So it's leading to a reduction in their ability to contract effectively. So the fatigue can cause a feeling of heaviness or discomfort during or immediately after exercise. A lot of these big terms you don't necessarily have to know. Um, a lot of these things I think are interesting in itself to sort of learn about and to understand why we get these specific things. Why does soreness happen when we're doing specific exercises? And, that's just basically something to be aware of why this happens, and how this process happens as well. So just know that that's basically sort of the process of, the background behind muscle soreness as it relates to the science aspect of it. So what I'm going to sort of talk about next is going over the differences between normal soreness that you would get from a workout versus maybe an indicator that you may have an injury. So, this is important because soreness, again, is different than an injury. Soreness can be a natural part of any workout that you're doing. It's sometimes you won't feel sore, which is fine. There's sort of a misconception too when it comes to soreness, and I know I'm sort of going off track here, but I do want to mention this because it can make a difference too to understand. So just because you don't feel sore, don't necessarily see that in particular as you're not making progress. You can still make progress in the gym and not feel sore. A lot of times what sort of prevents soreness if you're not really feeling sore is that doing stretching. This is something that I mention a lot of times to my clients is that stretching is very beneficial, not only of course for preventing that injury, but preventing, sort of a lot of soreness that you may have, especially if you're working a good chunk of muscles, like if you're working a certain set of muscles and if you feel like really sore in both of those muscles the next day, it's not going to be that great. So, stretching those muscles can help to alleviate that soreness. Now, again, soreness can, it's a natural part of it, but just know that it's not necessarily a full indicator that you're not making progress in the gym, is what I'm trying to get across. Because a lot of people sort of think that soreness is sort of an indicator of that, where even if you're not sore, you can still be making progress. A lot of times, especially for me, and again, of course, I want to reiterate this point so you sort of understand, because this is a really common question people have. With me, I don't really get sore. I work out pretty consistently throughout the week. And when I got started, I was really sore because my body wasn't adapt, it didn't know how to react to all the stress that was being put on it. So when you start, you're going to have that soreness. It's just natural, because your body's not adapted. But over time, you will notice that you won't get sore as often when you're in a workout routine because your muscles are really adapting. So that's sort of the aspect of it, is that your muscles really if you're starting something new, they're not really sure how to react to that stress that's placed upon them, and that's where, we get the soreness from. But anyways, I just want to mention that because that's a really common question people have, is that they don't understand, that soreness is not necessarily, doesn't mean that, if you are sore that you won't get muscle, or if you're not sore. That's sort of what I want to sort of explain there. But anyways, talking about what we're going over when it comes to normal soreness. So normal soreness, and again, we're talking about normal soreness between injury. So with normal soreness, you get basically this soreness comes 12 to 24 hours after exercise. The peaks of this soreness, again, are at 24 to 72 hours, and then it subsides within 5 to 7 days usually. So this can be dull aching or stiffness. You know this feeling if you've had this feeling before. Bilateral, typically affecting muscle groups worked. So bilateral means two muscle groups, or if you're working multiple muscle groups, you're likely to feel that soreness. So the other thing to keep in mind is that it does improve with lot movement or stretching, which I just mentioned. Um, and I do have your question here, Wayne, that I'm going to answer because, again, I have two screens now. So you mentioned I've noticed the soreness is greater at night than during the day. Is that normal? So, as I just mentioned, when it comes to that soreness, I think it's natural. Again, if your soreness isn't coming till later on in the afternoon, or like, later on at night, that could be just that delayed onset muscle soreness. Because, you may not feel it initially, like sort of like what I just mentioned. You're not with certain exercises, and especially if maybe doing exercises that you're not as familiar with, or you've trained a new muscle that you're not trained as much lately. That's sort of what that indicator is. That's what I would basically see that as, is that could be a sign of that. So just sort of keep that in mind. That soreness is going to happen here and there, even if you're not sore for a long period of time and you get sore. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It does happen because I've had it myself to where, again, I could work out very often and it's very rare that I get sore, but then there are times where I do get sore because I've not worked that muscle as much as I have, recently. So that's what I would probably see that as, is it may be that you just haven't used that muscle as often, and so your body is sort of reacting to that. So that's not necessarily bad, but that's probably what it is that you're having that delayed onset muscle soreness. So I hope that answered your question a little bit. Um, the other point that I do want to mention here is that, of course, the normal soreness comes from new or intense micro tear exercises, which is known as, of course, eccentric exercises. Again, it's that, that contracting, that lifting phase. That's where you're getting that soreness. So this is sort of reiterating what we just talked about a few slides ago. So let's sort of differentiate this between talking about injury. So the signs of injury are immediate or within a few hours. So you're going to notice the sign of injury pretty quickly. So, and I can give you an example of this. So basically, I've had injuries where, even though, even though the Smith machine, and I've mentioned the Smith machine a couple of times, but I've injured myself on the Smith machine before, even though it's very much safer than the barbell. I'm just that person who just injures himself on something that's so easy not to get injured from. But anyways, I've injured myself on the Smith machine before, and I usually know immediately when I've injured myself. If I feel some kind of pop, or if I feel some kind of really uncomfortable tension in that muscle, that's really how I know that I've injured myself. So, understanding injury, you're going to know. You're going to feel, you may not actually feel a deep pain from the injury, but you may feel some kind of pop or some kind of really uncomfortable strain. And that's how you're going to know the difference between, just being sore, because that soreness again is very delayed. You're not going to get soreness immediately after workout. So just know that the signs of injury is that immediate or within a few hours response. That's how you're going to know that you're good, that you possibly have an injury. So persistent and potentially worsening over time, again, that's another sign of injury. If that soreness, if you think that you're sore and that soreness is not going away, that's a sign of injury. Of course, I do want to mention as well that if you do, have any type of injury, of course, go and see a doctor if you do know for sure, because again, if you're working with a personal trainer or anything like that, we can't just diagnose your problem. We can't diagnose that because that's out of our expertise. So, of course, when it comes to an injury, of course, you do need to reach out to a doctor. They're the ones that help you in that aspect. Just keep in mind that personal trainers are there for the preventive aspect of things, for helping you with your workouts, for helping you with, general guidelines on nutrition. So if you do have an injury, of course, reach out to a doctor. But I just wanted to mention that beforehand. So again, with the injury, it's persistent, potentially worsening over time. It's often unilateral, so it's localized to a specific area. If you're feeling pain in a specific area rather than, feeling uh, pain like bilateral, bilateral again is in different areas. So a lot of times with soreness, like I mentioned before, bilateral is usually, of course, bilateral means two, but it means, of course, specific areas. So again, going back to that normal soreness, you're going to feel soreness in multiple areas. Whereas if you're having an injury, it's usually going to be unilateral and it's going to be in one specific area of the body. Um, Sometimes, of course, can be a sharp stabbing or throbbing pain. Again, that's not the case with all injuries. This worsens with movement. So if you're performing any type of movement in your workouts, um, and you have any weakness or instability with that particular muscle, that's another sign that you're going to know that you're injured. Trauma or overuse or improper technique, that's what can lead to those signs of injury. Sprains, tears, strains, anything like that are sort of signs of that. And like I mentioned, you will notice when you're injured. You're going to notice the difference between that and soreness. Um, just keep in mind if you have an immediate pain, if you have a really, you know, like I mentioned, like when I do deadlifts, I've hurt my back a few times when I do deadlifts. And that's one workout I try to mention to everybody. Really take your time with that workout. Deadlifts are something you have to take your time with. I love doing those workouts, don't get me wrong, but if you don't do them properly, that you can hurt yourself with those. So the way you prevent this, of course, like I mentioned, is stretching, foam rolling, anything of that sort, especially have a warm up phase that you go into before you go into your workouts. That's really going to help prevent that injury. Make sure you're focusing on slow, controlled movement. And my clients know this. I say this all the time to my clients because it's very important. You have to really focus on your movement as much as possible. If you go too fast, and that's a lot of times what's happened with me is I've unintentionally went too fast and that's where I've got my injury. And I sort of know, I sort of realize that, especially times where I really try to rush through my workouts because I'm ready to get done, you can't do that. Don't, take your time, make sure that you have enough time to really go through that workout. Do not try to rush through it because you are going to get injured if you go too quickly through those reps. So just know that that's sort of the difference when we're talking about, normal soreness and then injury. So the other part of this, and this is basically the last sort of portion of this presentation, is sort of muscle soreness and sort of talking about the myths and facts, of course, as it relates to muscle soreness. So there's a common myth, and this is sort of what I sort of mentioned earlier in the presentation. So muscle soreness, this is myth one. Muscle soreness is a sign of a good workout. So again, we're sort of talking about this topic again. So while muscle soreness can occur after an effective workout, it's not the only indicator of a good workout. Soreness is often results from introducing new exercises, like we just mentioned, increasing intensity, or working muscles that haven't been challenged in a while. A good workout can also be one that challenges your muscles without causing significant soreness. Again, like I mentioned, I don't get sore that often anymore like I used to when I started. And that's because my body's adapted. Does that mean that I'm not making progress in the gym? No. That doesn't necessarily mean that. I notice the progress from my appearance, from the changes in my body. That's not necessarily an indicator. If I'm noticing more muscle, then of course that soreness is not that indicator of, having a good workout or making progress in the gym. So just know that it can be a sign, it can be an indicator, but it's not the only indicator that you're making progress or you've had a good workout. So, myth number two, the more sore you are, the more muscle you're building. So, the fact is that soreness does not directly correlate with muscle growth. Muscle hypertrophy is primarily driven by progressive overload, nutrition, and recovery. And I've mentioned progressive overload over and over again. I know you've likely heard that. My clients have heard it many times as well. But your progress happens from a lot of the things that you do outside of the gym, to be honest, um, as well as the progressive overload aspect, which is gradually increasing intensity in your workouts. So that's where a lot of your progress is happening. That's where the muscle growth is happening, is in those three different points. Soreness usually indicates that your muscles are adapting to a new or more intense stimuli, but doesn't necessarily mean you're building more muscle. So myth number three, you shouldn't work out if you're sore. So this is another one. This is one that a lot of people aren't very familiar with. And this is something I do even if I'm sore. Even if I'm sore, I do still work out. But just keep in mind that it's important, to focus on, really not going as heavy as you would normally go with, if you're already sore and you're going into workout. So the fact is that light exercise can actually help alleviate muscle soreness by increasing blood flow to the affected areas, which aids in recovery. So, however, if the soreness is severe or impairs your ability to perform exercises with proper form, it's wise to focus on rest or low intensity exercise like walking, stretching, or yoga. So it is okay to, still work out even if you're sore. But just know that really go into to your workouts thinking of going a little bit lighter than you normally would to sort of help to alleviate that muscle soreness. And then as you get recovered, you can go back to what you were normally doing and gradually increase, your intensity as you did before. So again, these are just some sort of myths and facts to keep in mind. Again, a lot of people aren't really aware the difference between soreness and progress. They think that when you're sore, you're making progress, and then when you're not sore, you're not. But that's not the case. So I just wanted to address those facts. I hope that you guys found that interesting, and that gives you a little bit of advice and help. So this should be the last point that I have on here. So recovery strategies, and these are very important, especially when we're talking about, you know, really alleviating any muscle soreness or pain. So, active recovery, like low intensity activity, which includes light aerobic exercise such as walking or cycling. Proper hydration is crucial for muscle function and recovery. Dehydration can lead to increased muscle soreness and fatigue. So, make sure that you do stay properly hydrated. I always try to mention in my streams that it's very important to keep track of your water intake. This is something that I do every day. So definitely keep track of the water that you're intaking. Make sure that you stay properly hydrated, even if you're on a rest day. Consume the right amount of nutrients or the right nutrients after workout. That helps with repairing muscle tissue and replenish energy stores. This is protein and carbs. Good types of protein, lean meats, uh, anything of that sort. Lean meats, we've got protein powder. You've got snacks like Greek yogurt. Anything of that sort is a good sort of way for helping with, the nutrients for muscle repair. good carbs in your diet. Uh, Brown rice is a really good one. Anything of that sort that's going to really help with, helping with your body to recover, to repair those muscles and help to alleviate that muscle soreness and get you back to where you were before. So consuming the right nutrients after a workout can also help repair muscle tissue and replenish energy stores. And then, of course, air for 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep at night. A lot of those recovery strategies just sort of keep in mind to help to alleviate that muscle soreness and to sort of diminish that. Those are all great factors to keep in mind. Alrighty, so that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Again, I hope that you found this helpful and valuable. I know I kind of went off into different directions with talking about this topic, but it is very important to sort of be aware of, especially, when you're understanding what muscle soreness is versus injury, and then understanding the indicator of, is muscle soreness a good thing? Does that mean I'm having a good workout? And things of that nature. I think it's important to sort of differentiate what that means. And again, it's something that not a lot of people are aware of, that, that's something I think you just need to be aware of, as you're doing your workouts, that soreness is not a direct indicator of your progress. So if you guys have any questions on anything I discussed, feel free to reach out and let me know what those questions are. Again, I have all kinds of different social media websites that you can check out if you have any questions. Of course, my website down here again is bponlinefitness.com. It stays updated weekly. I usually try to keep it updated. This live stream will go on there today, so definitely watch for that. And of course, check out all the different information I have on there. And if you want, more information on online coaching, feel free to let me know. So again, guys, thank you for the time. And I will definitely see you guys next Wednesday on our next live stream at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I'll have that event up pretty soon. It will likely be uploaded on Friday. Usually I upload those events on Friday, so you can RSVP to them before the event happens. So thank you guys once again. And I will see you guys next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time on our next live stream. So thank you guys.